Penis will return next Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock, 7 Central and Mountain Time on most of these stations.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
I was excited to get the opportunity to work on Captain America for the regular series, particularly because after a long period of trying these other looks for the character, they were finally returning him to his classic appearance, and I had let it be known that I wanted to work on classic looks of characters as much as possible. And luckily, he's one of those characters you can never completely escape his original design. And it just would happen to be that Ta-Nehisi Coates would be writing this new series, which makes it even more of something to be a spotlight put on it. And he can bring a lot of topicality and a lot of introspection of what Captain America's symbol can mean today and what it's challenged by in terms of the times we live in. And it's a perfect way to be involved with the project because I've always felt that Captain America's got a great history of being a character relevant to what was going on in our world, what was going on in American society. He's never been just this flag-waving character of, you know, like, hey, whatever America does, just go along with it because, hey, we're all about America. In a way, he was a character of contradictions. He's draped in the flag, but he's always sort of running head up against these compromises for American ideals and what we should be keeping at our heart.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book and occasionally other subjects conversation show. John Suntress here. I'm happy to welcome Doug Fischer back to Word Balloon. Doug, I want to get it right. Editor-in-Chief of Ring Magazine?
Editor-in-Chief, you got it.
Excellent, man. Yeah, a guy that we encountered a few times in the 90s, and you might know or you may not know that I had a background when I worked in sports radio. I covered boxing from 1989 to 2006 pretty regularly, and got to travel
You did some stuff for Bert Sugar, right?
I sure did. Absolutely. The late, great Bert Sugar. My God. Gone 12 years now. 2012, I believe, we lost Bert.
Yeah,
I know.
right.
I know. But, man, Doug, I got to tell you, I've always been, still paying attention to the sport, and I'm a fan. And I really think we had a great 2023 with a lot of great fights.
Yeah.
And it seems like the stars are lining up for some good fights in 24. I just saw an announcement that Dan Rafel had. I follow his Substack. And George Campoboso and Vasily Lomachenko are
in Australia in May. Yeah, George Kambosos, the former undisputed lightweight champion, against another former undisputed lightweight champion and a former #1 pound-for-pound rated fighter. Arguably a future Hall of Famer in Lomachenko. So we'll see. We'll see if Lomachenko, what he has left. At some point he's going to hit the wall. I know he lost his last fight, but a lot of folks, myself included, thought that he did just enough to outpoint Devin Haney in a really good, I would say like a high-speed chess match with some guts and grit, tossed in there, but a high-level, elite-level technical battle. The younger man prevailed, but the older man did enough to say that he's still here. I know there's folks that are saying like, whatever, Lomachenko has 2 losses and he shouldn't be in the pound for pound or whatever. And I'm like, if Devin Haney's good enough to be in the pound for pound, then Lomachenko's good enough to be in the pound for pound. Because I think the slight majority of observers believe that Lomachenko did enough to deserve the victory.
I hear you.
Ask somebody like, listen, did you just see elite level skills on one side of that matchup? Did you just see pound for pound level skill on Haney's side and not on Lomachenko's side? Because if you didn't see pound for pound level skill on Lomachenko's side, then how does beating him merit induction into the pound for pound? Right? It was pound for pound on both sides. So,
and the lightweights certainly are one of the hot divisions right now.
But you do wonder if he can be up, if he can get up for a George Kambosos.
Sure.
You know,
Well, and
that's
regardless,
in him, you know.
and the guy had like 300 amateur fights or whatever. So
there's wear and tear, there's tread on those tires, and
Yeah.
he was probably at his best as a featherweight or a junior lightweight, and he's pushing it against modern size lightweights, you know. And we all know, you know, Haney puts on a lot of weight, you know, after he weighs in, but all these guys do. Haney's not alone. A lot of people are giving him a lot of guff for weighing in at 140 against Regis Prograis and fighting at like 165 or whatever. And he probably put on just as much weight as a lightweight, but all these guys do. And I'm not just talking about currently. If you go back to Shane Mosley in the 90s, he was putting on 20 pounds. He was weighing in at 135 and he was fighting at 147 or 150. And before he gave up the IBF lightweight title, he was rehydrating to like 154, 155. Which is insane, but you could do it with the modern methods, you know, and with, you know, basically weighing in, you know, anywhere from 24 hours to 35 hours prior to fighting.
Absolutely. Harold Brazier, the old junior welterweight contender.
I remember him.
I got to know him because he was out of Indiana, state next door to me. So I'd seen a lot of top rank cards. And I remember him saying, oh, you know, it's getting harder and harder to make 140. And I'm like, Harold, move up to 147. And he goes, are you nuts? Just like you were saying, he goes, these guys, when they're not, you know, weighing in and fighting for a title, they're walking around at 160, 165. He
170.
Goes, yeah, and they hit that hard. He goes, so no thank you. I got cool.
He walked around close to his fighting weight. And he didn't give himself a chance to blow up in weight because he fought so often. He's like the last fighter to have a schedule of like the golden age fighters. He fought on the schedule of a fighter from the 1940s and the 1950s. And if you guys don't believe me at home, you kids at home, go to BoxRec and check out how many fights he had.
100%, man. Absolutely. That's like, and you'll forgive me because I'm going to throw in some of my memories while I'm talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Barrera and Eric Morales, one of their fights. I was in the press room, and Bert Sugar introduced me to Buddy McGirt.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, of course, Buddy, he just whose corner was he? Was he in? He
was in Callum Smith's corner against.
Against Better BF. That's right. And I mean, I had to I'm like, Buddy, good Lord, when you were fighting, and even as a trainer, one of my favorite guys. I mean, my God, another working class contender. And man, those fights.
Those two titles that he won. He won a title in the junior welterweight division and welterweight in one of the all-time great boxing clinics. He lifted I think it was the WBC welterweight title from Simon Brown. And you know what? I watched that fight once live at a friend's house. It was on Showtime. I've never had to watch it again because he was so perfect. I mean, it was compelling in real time because Simon Brown was such a monster. He was such a dangerous fighter. He was so big for the weight. You know, I'm sure he walked around at like 170, and he was very comfortable fighting at junior middleweight and even middleweight. But as a welterweight, he was brutal. His fights with Tyrone Trice made Trice rest in peace. Title bouts against Tyrone Trice and Simon Brown. He was just a monster in those fights. He was a monster in a title unification bout against a good friend of his, Maurice Blocker. But that's the kind of guy he was. I mean, he wasn't going to take it easy on his best bud. And he knocked out his friend, which is great. But he was that kind of guy. He just kept coming at you. And he was a good boxer, too. But
also those losses that Buddy McGirt had against Pernell Whitaker, I thought were very competitive.
Especially the first one. I was at the first fight. That was in the theater inside Madison Square Garden. I was a student at Columbia's journalism school.
That's fantastic.
A graduate degree, yeah. And I went there with a bunch of guys, and it was everybody in that theater. It seats about 5,000, and it was packed. Everybody in there was a boxing expert. First of all, it was like everybody who was involved in boxing in New York City.
Oh,
everybody, every gym in the New York City, all five boroughs. Everybody was there, but the fans that were there were like historians, and they knew everything about boxing. It was like an amazing experience. And I thought McGirt ran him pretty quick. I thought, just like in my own head, I thought that was like a 7-5 kind of fight.
Totally.
In favor of Pernell Whitaker. And Whitaker had to really, it took him half the fight to figure him out.
Agreed.
And now imagine if Buddy McGirt had been healthy, because McGirt, I think he had like a rotator cuff injury. Yeah, in his left.
Yeah.
So his jab and his hook wasn't quite on point.
That totally true, man. All right, let's get back to the modern era. The heavyweights are really in an interesting position, and it's been great for the last 7 or 8 years. But now it's interesting. We got the elite division that seems to be reaching their twilight period.
Yeah.
And this brewing group of contenders under them.
Yeah,
but,
and now there's money that's going to make these fights happen with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, what do you think of that, Doug? Because
pros and cons. There's pros and cons.
100%.
Listen, the pros, obviously, there's fighters and John?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here.
I'm sorry. I saw like a little buffer thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So pros and cons. The pros, obviously, the fights are being made because for years there have been fighters, and if it's not the fighters themselves, it's their promoters or their network platform affiliations, whatever. They've been circling each other for years. Like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, or even Fury and Alexander Usyk. They've been kind of dancing around each other for a couple of years now. And so now the money is there. There's no excuses. Everybody's going to get paid. So they're pulling the trigger and they're making the fight, but the fights are taking place in Saudi Arabia. So it's a funny thing in boxing. The more the industry chases the money, the more marginalized it becomes, right? So there was a time where boxing was in everybody's household, either via radio and then later television, right? In the 50s. But in the 60s, we get the advent of closed circuit. So it's like, hey, if you guys are going to watch this fight live, you got to pay extra. All right, pay extra, and you got to go find a theater that's getting this closed circuit feed. And that was basically the creation of the hardcore fan, because it was going to be the hardcore fan that was going to do that. Everybody else is like, well, I'll wait, or I'll just read about it in the papers, okay, whatever. Or if there's a simultaneous radio feed, I'm going to listen to it on the radio. I'm not going to pay an extra whatever to see this fight live. So it was the hardcore heads that would see the fight live. And guess what? There were a lot of them in the 1960s, and the promoters made a shit ton of money. And the star fighters they saw a percentage of that, but only the star fighters, right?
Only the star fighters, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then alongside that, we did have fights on the weekends on all 3 networks.
Yeah, you still had so simultaneously with the closed circuit era, which went right up into the 80s, you still had championship boxing on network television.
Yep.
But by the end of the 1980s, premium cable, subscription cable with HBO and Showtime, they're offering licensing fees that the networks can't match. So obviously the boxing power brokers, they go over to HBO and they go over to Showtime, that further marginalizes it. Once you're off network television, it's just a much smaller audience. And then in the 90s, you get pay-per-view, which is the natural evolution of closed circuit. It's closed circuit, but it's in your house, okay? But you still got to pay. And that price gets pricier and pricier, going into the 2000s. And really, since the start of the 21st century, boxing has been a niche sport. It's been a marginalized sport. It's great when it's great. And listen, when you're talking about the undisputed heavyweight championship, like you have between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, people are going to pay attention. All right. The sporting world is going to pay attention. But if it comes to, all of the huge fights are going to Saudi Arabia, it's going to further marginalize it, because the media can't afford, unless you're like the elite, the chosen of His Excellency, Turkey al-Sheikh, you can't afford that ticket. You can't afford, if you're like a content creator, right? Or if you're working for a smaller publication or whatever, you cannot afford to fly to Riyadh. And it's just not worth it. The travel and the cost to get your content that you're going to share with fight fans. So fight fans, your only contact with this is just through the promotion and the pay-per-view, basically. And And but that's, again, that's boxing. I don't want to say that, I don't want to paint Saudi Arabia as the bad guys, because the same thing can be said for, casinos in Atlantic City or Las Vegas. There was a time where a town like Chicago was a fight town, or a town like San Antonio, or even New York City, whatever. New York City was the center of boxing, just like Los Angeles. But at some point, maybe the 90s, a huge fight that would have made perfect sense in New York City was going to go to Atlantic City, or a huge fight that made perfect sense in Los Angeles is just naturally going to go to Las Vegas, because the casinos can confront a site fee that, a huge, a venue, a huge, even a stadium, or, a major arena in the other major markets in America just can't match. But that, the fans that would have flocked to see that fight, they're not going to go to Vegas. It's just not feasible for them. So
sure, the
fan base shrinks, like I said, and this, when you were young, boxing was mainstream.
Absolutely.
And a big part of that equation was that there were homegrown fights. There were homegrown fighters that were local attractions, and they were fights, sometimes, against crosstown rivals. Now, I'll just give you an example within, the last 30 years, and this is in the lighter weight classes. Johnny Tapia and Romero, what's his name? Danny Romero.
Oh, Danny Romero, sure.
Really, really good fighters. They were like flyweight, junior bantamweights, between 112 pounds and 118 pounds. And they were top level fighters.
Oh, yeah.
But most importantly, they were entertaining fighters. They were both charismatic, different personalities, different side of the track, but the same hometown, Albuquerque.
Right.
That fight belonged in Albuquerque, but of course, it's going to go to Las Vegas.
Right. San Antonio was a big fight town.
Yes.
God, I remember in the 90s, and now I'm blanking on was it the Ruelas in Sacramento? The Arco Arena?
Sacramento, the attractions for the Arco Arena was Tony the Tiger Lopez.
Of course.
Yeah. And Bobby Capone, even though he was a Southern California guy, later in his career, he relocated. He had a lot of his big fights.
Or Virgil Hill in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Yes. Yeah. And it made sense.
Of course,
it's great. And the thing is like he was a local attraction, but fans around the country got to see him fight on network television.
Absolutely.
And the same thing for those Tony Lopez fights.
100%. Absolutely.
Even going even into the early 90s, because I remember watching on NBC Tony Lopez fight Jorge Paez.
Right.
And by the way, those fights did tremendous ratings.
They were entertaining.
Across the country, they did tremendous ratings.
But
the thing is there was a vibrant boxing community there. They were, those fights taking place there. They created fight fans in that area.
Absolutely.
All the fights moved to A, off of network television, and then B, to the casinos. And it's not just Las Vegas, but it's also the Native American casinos, California and in Connecticut and, Verona, New York and whatever.
Right.
It marginalizes the sport. So what we're seeing with Saudi Arabia is it's just that further process. We get the fights we want, but it's not there for the fans. The fans, you can't be there. It's not feasible for the average fight fan to fly to Saudi Arabia,
Well, no.
And if you want to see it live, you got to pay for it. You got to pay for it just to stream it or to see it on your TV.
Don Lenza points out Vinny Pazienza in Rhode Island.
Yeah. The Paz name. How about his fights with Greg Haugen? Those were fun. Oh my goodness.
They were fantastic. His fight with
I think some of those fights, except for the rubber match was on NBC.
Okay.
Because I remember Dr. Ferdy Pacheco interviewing Vinny Paz after the fight. But the first two fights, which were at lightweight and were 15 rounders, those might have been closed circuit or early pay-per-view.
I don't remember.
The thing is a couple of weeks later there was the tape delay. You know that
Oh,
was
absolutely.
network television, or if not network television, then basic cable. And for a beautiful time in the first half of the 90s, you had that. Even if there was a fight on pay-per-view or closed circuit, you waited a couple, or even like on premium cable, you waited a couple of weeks, and you could see that very same fight on Tuesday Night Fights or an ESPN.
Yes,
because I wasn't able. I was in college, and I had a TV, but I didn't have cable.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't have premium cable. I didn't have subscription cable. Well, I didn't have cable, period, on my TV. But the college that I was at, they had like a community TV room, and it had basic cable, but it didn't. You couldn't get pay-per-view. Is what I'm saying. And it didn't have HBO or Showtime, so I missed the James Toney Mike McCallum fight. I only had to wait. I think I had to wait 2 weeks, and then they showed it on maybe Tuesday Night Fights.
I think you're right. That's hilarious.
If it wasn't USA Network, then it was ESPN. And I watched a couple, hardcore boxing fans. We took over.
we lost HBO a few years ago, and obviously the end of 2023, we saw the end of Showtime boxing, and now. And my God. And now
that's the end. That was the end of Showtime bowing out, is the end of the premium cable era, which we had from the mid 80s to.
Actually, you could go back. Yeah. Well, HBO did at the very least the Thriller in Manila back in the 70s.
Yes, that's true.
But I hear what you're saying now, and I want to talk about what's coming up now. PBC cut this deal with Amazon, which is interesting. What do you think of the PBC Amazon deal?
We have to let it play out. We don't have the schedule yet. The first show should be at the end of March. I think March 30 is what's being reported. I don't think they've figured out what the main event's going to be, or I don't think they've figured out if it's going to be pay-per-view or if it's just going to be a show that you can access if you subscribe to Amazon. You're a subscriber, which there are a lot of. So that's a good thing. I do believe that, and I don't know if this for sure, we'll find out, but I do believe that pretty much everybody that was involved in the Showtime productions, the Showtime boxing productions, they're just going to move right over to Amazon Prime. So they're not going to reinvent the wheel. You're not going to have those growing pains of like a whole new broadcast crew and new.
Sure,
it happens. So there will be familiar faces calling the action and experienced producers behind the scenes in the truck, so to speak. But will it be better? I don't know. They're saying between 12 and 14 shows
in a year.
Yeah, and now PBC has a monstrous stable. Is that enough for that kind of stable? And are we going to get the fights? Are we going to get the top guys in the PBC league, so to speak? Are we going to see them fight each other?
That's been something that's frustrated me.
And here's the thing: the biggest drawback with the PBC is how inactive the PBC fighters are, and I think it cost them in the major fights that they had in 2023. Stephen Fulton losing to Naoya Inoue, Errol Spence losing to Terrence Crawford.
Agreed.
I don't know if Deontay Wilder is still a PBC fighter, but he had been a PBC player, a major PBC player for several years. And he had been extremely inactive going into his fight against Joseph Parker, who had been active. Joseph Parker fought 4 times in 2023.
It was pretty amazing, and the
first fight of the Deontay Wilder's first fight in 2023 was that fight against Parker, and he couldn't.
No, and the first round blowout of Hellenius really didn't give him much ring activity.
No. Also, he didn't knock off any ring rust, and he wasn't able to get rounds in to where he's practicing the things that he was working on in the gym with Malik Scott. It's not enough just to work on a day by day, to apply what you learn. You have to have a fight that actually goes some rounds where you're able to put into practice these things that he's working on the mitts and in sparring and on the heavy bag and all that kind of good stuff.
Doug, you know better than me. Was he really trying to add to his arsenal? Because we all know he had the big right hand and always did. But he had guys like Malik Scott, and even before that, Mark Breland, who, if he did take the lessons, probably could have learned how to jab and defend himself. And I'm sorry, I've never been a fan of Deontay's. I feel un-American saying that, but his limited skill and seemingly lack of ever improving his abilities.
I liked watching. I liked and still like watching Deontay Wilder fight because of the element of danger, because that power is real. That right hand is it's like a bolt of lightning, and it's knockouts like that. Knockouts where guys are paralyzed, frozen, sent to the canvas in a shivering mess.
For real.
You don't get that in any other sport. You rarely get that in any other sport. So it is a spectacle. And I appreciate boxing skill, boxing IQ, good technique, ring generalship. I appreciate all that, but I'm attracted to the violence of boxing as well. Deontay, he did deliver that. He had the power, he had the bone crunching, mind numbing power, and he also had a lot of heart. So he would get in there, and he would take a beating. We saw that in his second and third fights with Tyson Fury.
Absolutely,
the guy's got a lot of heart, and he took some punishment in the first fight against Luis Ortiz.
Absolutely.
Arthur Spilka, the Polish dude. Not a high level fighter, but like a thug. Like a goon who just took it to him until he ran into that right hand, and good night. But those fights are fun. I like that. So
I hear you.
I wasn't a huge fan, but I did enjoy watching him. But maybe he's just showing his age, but what I think is
38.
He's 38, but beyond the age, I think it was the inactivity, and during that time out of the ring, he's in the gym. He'd been training out here in Southern
California.
At a gym called Brick House Boxing for months, and he's just working on stuff. And the thing is he's got a good rapport with Malik Scott, but Malik Scott was that technician. Malik Scott had the jab. Malik Scott had a jab that was like Larry Holmes-esque. I mean, he could win fights with just a jab, and he often did that, and they weren't always that entertaining. But really smart guy, really cerebral dude. And I think Deontay's at his best just going on instincts, just getting in there and looking for just being athletic, avoiding getting hit, but just waiting for that, that time to pull the trigger, but definitely pulling the trigger, being willing to pull the trigger. And I think working on all these different maneuvers, he's thinking. And he got in there and he's thinking and he's thinking and he's thinking and he's overthinking. The same criticism that everybody had for the last couple of fights of Anthony Joshua's are saying he's thinking so much that he's overthinking.
Yes.
And what's that saying? Overanalysis leads to paralysis.
Absolutely.
Right? I think we saw that with Deontay Wilder, which is funny because Wilder loves taking shots at Anthony Joshua. But what? With the amount of money that the Saudis are, and they are invested in the heavyweight division, we might still see. I mean, I don't think Wilder's going to retire.
Okay,
he may have, toyed with it during his post-fight interview with Chris Mannix, but I think he'll be back. He'll be back, and we could still see Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, and it might still be a shootout, the shootout that we're hoping for. I mean, I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that Wilder Joshua turns out to be this generation's version of Foreman Lyle. You know what I mean?
Oh man, absolutely! What a great fight!
Happened because I think Joshua would step to him and force it out of him, because Parker was real careful about it. He applied smart pressure. He didn't overcommit. Yep. He threw more punches than Wilder did, which isn't saying a whole lot, but at least he tried. And he had some moments there where it looked like Wilder was on Queer Street, but I'll say something about Wilder. Wilder is not as easy to hit as he looks. Like he's not slick in there. He's not slick in there, but he has a way, because of his height, because he's so tall and rangy and long.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
like he leaned back and he kind of would just turn around, and
Yes.
he wasn't getting hit flush. I don't think he got beat up in those 12 rounds with Parker. He did get buzzed a few times. I don't think he got. It wasn't like the Fury fight. It wasn't like that.
No, absolutely.
He took an absolute shit kicking. Too much.
100%.
Matter of fact, too much. You know, a couple rounds.
But I thought Parker kind of exposed that you don't need the skill and power of Fury, and that if you fight a good strategy fight, I mean, kind of in a sad way,
Andy Lee gave him a good game plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Andy Lee's a smart guy.
Well, and I would like to see Wilder fight Andy Ruiz, frankly. I think that would be an intrigue fight, but nobody wants to fight Andy Ruiz, I believe.
I don't know. Well, I think he's going to eventually get into the mix. I mean, maybe he's been pricing himself out, and he's not going to fight unless it's for a shit ton of money. But at some point, I mean, listen, I'm not that interested in Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou.
I wanted to ask. Go on.
But co-feature to that, Zheli Zhang against Joseph Parker, I am into that because I agree. That's a showdown between two legitimate top 10 heavyweights. You know,
absolutely,
arguably top 5. I don't know.
I completely.
I like that fight. So what we're seeing is we're seeing these guys fight each other. You know, with the Day of Reckoning in December. We had Parker versus Wilder, and we had Joshua versus what's the guy's name? Otto Wallin.
Otto Wallin, absolutely.
Legit guys, and now we're seeing, especially with Parker. Parker's going from Wilder to Big Bang Zhang. So tipping my hat to the New Zealander, man. That dude, I like that.
I completely agree, man. And when it took the Joyce fight for us to really kind of realize that Parker wasn't done.
Yeah, and it looks like Frank Warren is definitely in tight with His Excellency, So we can see Joyce. He's going to get a comeback victory under his belt.
Sure,
but who knows? Maybe we see Joyce versus Andy Ruiz. That's the one thing. And so we were talking about pros and cons about Saudi Arabia and His Excellency and Riyadh season and all this. We're seeing, promoters that don't always get along, like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, working together. We're seeing guys, and so we could see PBC players in against top heavyweights from the Warren stable, from the Eddie Hearn stable, from the Top Rank stable.
Do you see the PBC Al Heyman fighters finally being willing to work with other promoters? Because
some of these guys, it's their last hurrah. And if the Saudis start looking at the lighter weight classes, so far it's been heavyweight.
It's
been the cruiserweight champion Jai Opataya. They like him.
Yeah.
It's been light heavyweight. They like Dmitry Bivol, and they definitely want Artur Beterbiev versus Bivol, and I'm all for that. That's one of the
great fight
we made.
Yeah.
If they start to look at the lighter weight classes, then definitely, if you're Keith Thurman, you've only got a couple of fights left, and he's been woefully inactive. I consider him semi-retired.
Interesting.
There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of fighters who they've got really good resumes. They've been PBC players for several years. They were in their prime when the PBC was launched in 2015, March of 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So we're talking about guys like Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman, who are still around. Other guys from that era, from that mix of top level welterweights like Sean Porter, he is retired. So if they're only going to have one or two more fights, then they need to be willing to cross the street. I think they are now. They've seen Deontay Wilder do it. Man,
that's a good point too. Yeah.
Now they're not going to get paid heavyweight money, but they're going to get paid maybe career high.
I hope the Saudis are interested in the lighter weights. I mean, I really do, because again, you're right. I mean, ultimately it's money that will make these guys make the fights and make these things happen.
I've heard that Devin Haney is looking at going to fighting over there, and he's visited more than once. And I've heard that the Saudis are interested in Naoya Inoue.
By the way, I don't know, and it's like way like in the middle of the night for you to watch it live. I love getting up early Chicago time at 6 or 7 in the morning.
Yeah, it's earlier for me.
Yeah, I know it is, buddy. I know it's an extra 2 hours.
But Naomi, in a way, it's worth it. I'm going to be doing it for Kenshiro Taraji
tomorrow.
Yeah. To me, it feels like tonight. I
think exactly.
At 1 a.m. So whatever. I'll probably hit the sack like around 11 and get up like around 2 and watch the co-featured bout. That's what's the guy's name? WBA flyweight title holder Artem Dalakian.
Okay.
I'll watch him. He's in against a Japanese contender who's known for his punching power. So I'll watch that. I'll be writing the report for Ring TV. So I'll be watching that, taking notes, and then Kenshiro beat one of my favorite fighters about a year and a half ago, a guy named Hiroto Kiyoguchi, and broke my heart. But he's such a professional. He epitomizes what it is to be a world champion. And he's a guy who legitimately wants to fight the best fighters in his weight class, which is like the second to the lightest, 108-pound division.
Yeah.
We call it junior flyweight. I think it's called light flyweight by others, but he's got it all. I mean, he's a good fluid boxer. He's got good power, goes to the body well. Just seems like a great guy. So I've become a fan of his. He beat my guy, and now I'm a fan of his.
That's great.
I have to respect him, and I enjoy watching him fight.
I felt Inoue and his performances last year made him fighter of the year. I know a lot of people thought of Bud Crawford because and everything.
I'm cool with that, but for me, it was Inoue. For me, and I like Inoue. A, he fought twice. B, in his first two fights,
wow,
he only fought twice.
I didn't realize that. Go on.
Yeah, he fought twice, but those two fights were his first two fights in the junior featherweight division, and he took on the two best fighters in the division, and Stephen Fulton and Marlon Tapales, and those guys were also unified champions. And especially with Fulton's a guy that a lot of folks were saying deserves to be rated among the top 10 pound for pound. And I wasn't against that notion. He was undefeated, and he had defeated a lot of unbeaten fighters to get to where he was. He was Ring Magazine's #1 rated 122 pounder. And that performance was breathtaking. I mean, I thought Inoue would win, even by late stoppage. But I thought that there would be a lot of competitive rounds, and there were not a lot of competitive rounds, man. But what I really like about what Inoue did was that those fights happened when they should happen. He ended 2022 as the undisputed bantamweight champion, and he takes on a unified champ in his first fight at 122, his first fight of 2023, and Fulton is at the peak of his powers, and Inoue is at his peak. And that's what we want to see. And as much as I was happy to see Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence, been waiting for that fight for more than a few years. And it didn't look like, and this is not hindsight being 2020. Listen, the form that Errol Spence had from 2017 to 2019, I'm sorry, it was better than the form that he had.
Oh, yeah.
Post that car accident.
The car accident, absolutely.
And we know about the retina surgery, and now he's getting cataract surgery.
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, I don't know. He was inactive. He looked good. He looked good in beating Danny Garcia and Ugas, but it wasn't those breathtaking dynamic performances that we had seen previous.
I completely agree, man. No, you're absolutely right. And Inoue,
sorry, no offense to Terrence Crawford. It's not his fault.
Oh no.
But Crawford, Crawford's not an easy guy to deal with. All you got to do is talk to Top Rank and Bob Arum.
Right.
And I don't think he was easy to I don't think he was easy to negotiate with, with Al Heyman and the PBC. Like, it took some time for that fight to happen. And I'm not holding that against them, but I'm just saying that both sides had a part in that fight not happening when it should have happened. And obviously the pandemic plays a role in that as well.
True.
But the bottom line is it didn't happen. It happened a little bit after the sell date.
Yeah.
And that's
something,
but it was still the performance of the year.
I agree with that. But fights past the sell date has kind of been a problem for the last 20 years.
Yes.
Oh, it really has. And that's why I'm hoping this infusion of Saudi money does kind of give us a few more fights when they should happen. I mean,
definitely in the heavyweight division, cruiserweight, where it involves Jai Opataya, the Ring Magazine champion.
Indeed.
The Ring Magazine champion, and not a belt holder, not a sanctioning body belt holder. And he's still the man. He's the guy His Excellency wants fighting over there. So that tells you something.
Well, and again,
in the light heavyweight division.
Well, and also, and I'm glad you mentioned this, because truly the governing bodies, and I mean, this has been going on since the 80s, where a lot of their arbitrary decisions to strip people of titles, it's like you're doing that to irrelevancy. And it does take things like Ring. Also, I know there's a confederation of boxing writers that put out their own top 10 for each division.
Yeah, the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board. They're good. Those are real rankings.
Yeah, man.
Rankings not based on affiliations or favorites or popularity. It's based solely on the merit of the fighters.
I felt it was a badge of honor when Burt Sugar let me be on the Budweiser ratings panel when I was writing for him and stuff. And I'm like, hey, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I took it seriously. I met, I don't know if you ever met him. Do you remember Norberto Longo, who used to do the Univision fights? Mundo del Box, World of Boxing. Well, I met
him, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
I met him at the De La Hoya Vargas fight.
Okay.
And I'm like, listen.
Bad Blood, September 2002.
And actually, I take that back. I met him again there. But they did there was a Univision card in Chicago, and I went to it, and I met him and Jesse. I can't remember his color man's full name.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking to Mr. Longo, and I'm like, Mr. Longo, he's like, yes. I said, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your show. I said, it's in Spanish, but certainly I can follow it, and I know the names. So, and obviously boxing speaks for itself, and he's nodding. And I go, it's great because I'm on Burt Sugar's ratings panel. And it really helps me educate myself of not only Hispanic fighters, but you guys show the Korean fighters and the fighters from Australia and the other Pacific.
Yeah, as a young fan, that's how I learned about fighters from other countries, because you didn't see them fight on television.
Right.
On American television, it was 90% American fighters, fighting in America.
Absolutely.
And when you would see a foreign fighters, because they came to visit, or they were that rare, like really popular fighter, and you'd see them. But that was so rare. And as a matter of fact, in college, when I would watch, the only time I could see fighters from Korea or Japan or Thailand would be on the Spanish, on Univision, on the Spanish networks.
Telemundo.
There was a big delay whenever a Puerto Rican or a Mexican fighter would travel to Japan.
Absolutely.
Or the rare occasions when the Thai fighter would travel to Mexico or Puerto Rico and fight there. And it was it was the lighter weight classes. It was like bantamweight or featherweight or even flyweight. And that was the only time I could see fighters like that, like Joichiro Tatsuyoshi. I remember watching him fight one of the Robinales brothers and get knocked out, as a matter of fact. And that was like that. I think that was Univision.
Sure, absolutely. Univision, absolutely, man. Yeah. No, again, I love that stuff. It was funny though. I was halfway through my conversation with him, and he's nodding the whole time. And finally, he goes, "So you like boxing?" And Jesse was watching the whole time, and he's like, "Hang on, man." And he translates the whole thing for me to Mr. Longo. And he's like, "Oh, mucho gusto. Very nice. Thank you. Very nice." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." But yeah, that was fantastic. I'm like, "All right, you're a good man." It's, and again, I appreciated his show. I didn't have to know the language. It's all right.
Sure.
Very funny, man.
Yeah. I mean, boxing shows, it's whenever you could get them, it was, I remember watching Max Kellerman's public access show.
Tell me about that, because obviously that was the New York thing. Absolutely. Tell me about it.
It was just Max sitting behind a desk and with a telephone on there, and he would have call-ins or whatever. But he would, he was talking like a hardcore New York fan. Like he had his favorites, usually New York fighters, but he knew a lot about boxing history, and he followed the entire sport. But just to see somebody talking about boxing to the level, to the detail that you yourself would talk to your friends with, it was like very special. When NBC had a series called, I think, The Greatest Fights, and they would show these fights like The Thrill in Manila, Rumble in the Jungle.
Oh yeah,
and even some old fights like Billy Conn versus
Joe
Louis. Yeah, if not the fights in entirety, then just select rounds or whatever. But they would get a panel, and it would be like Burt Sugar, Angelo Dundee, Georgie Benton.
Georgie Benton, absolutely.
Yeah, Archie Moore, who was hilarious.
Yep.
Archie Moore. Oh, who was the Don Dunphy?
Yes, the great
Don Dunphy's old ass. Oh, he was great. Yeah, he was, because he told it like he didn't give a shit. Ferdy Pacheco, and it was moderated by Ferdy Pacheco and
Marv.
Marv Albert. Yeah, Marv. Yeah.
Oh, they were the best.
Marv. And he was great. And he had fun with it. He would tease guys, or oh man. And
I was saying,
they even made VHS tapes of those. And I remember buying them at like Walmart.
I bought them.
I'd be like, oh, great, I want these. Yep.
Absolutely.
It was so rare and so special just to see a bunch of guys talking about boxing on television. It's just like, oh my God,
Well, thank God for YouTube, because a lot of those specials and even a lot of old ESPN classic reruns and stuff. Yeah, I'm so glad, because really it's only extended my education of the old days. The IBC days of the 50s and 60s and early closed circuit and stuff. And you get to see a lot of those fights, thankfully, because some tapeworms throw them up on YouTube and everything. I love it. And also, God, every division. I mean, so many great 70s and 80s fights. Robbie Sims and Ron Amundsen, at middleweight, things like that. And I always just say,
right there, not Sims, Ron Amundsen.
Ron Amundsen from Chicago. Yeah, man. Actually,
what was his nickname?
I don't remember. If Don is still watching, Don and his father were part of Ron's management.
Oh wow!
And he's Don's a good fight buddy. Absolutely.
He had a funny nickname, but he was a tough guy.
Absolutely. That's so funny, man. No, again, what I always used to say about the network guys, Alex Wallow was the best color commentator.
To me, Alex Wallow, he was like the boxing nerd. He was into all the minutia, and he knew like all the foreign fighters. He knew about the lighter weight classes, and he was the kind of guy that would get like, if a guy put on a lot of weight after the weigh-in, he was the kind of guy to like make a big deal. He was like boxing Twitter, like back then, like
for real.
Iran Barkley rehydrated to like 171 or 175 pounds after weighing in at 160 to fight Nigel Benn. And he made a big deal out of it, and even interviewed Iran Barkley before the fight and was kind of grilling Barkley, and Barkley just kind of laughed about it. Iran's just like, yeah, I'm a big guy, but whatever. They're doing previous day weigh-in now, and I'm not going to complain because I like it. I like to eat. And then after the fight, because if you remember, it was a blowout. And this was live network television.
Yep.
Nigel Benn took him out in one round. It was a shootout, but Benn hit Barkley when he was down, like on his hands and knees. Benn loaded up and clocked him. Iran Barkley when Barkley was down. He did it more than once. And he's throwing punches to the back of the head and all that. And
I got to rewatch.
Alex Wallow took Nigel Benn to task during the post-fight. And, the British fans came in with Nigel Benn, so they're all celebrating. They sing. They're drunk as shit.
Oh, yeah.
And they're singing and, they're carrying Nigel Benn around the ring. And finally, they get him down to interview Alex Wallow. And Wallow's like, he's going right to the replay and saying, like, listen, man, you hit him in the back of the head. And Nigel Benn's like, no, I didn't. I did no such thing.
I have to
watch. And they show the replay, and then they cut back to Benn, and Ben's like, oh, yeah, I see what you mean there.
Wow.
But it was really interesting because he didn't deny it. He was trying to explain it. He's like, you don't understand. You're not a fighter. And Alex Wallow says, that's why I'm asking. And so Ben's like, I was so hyped.
Oh, I gotta watch this.
I was so within myself. And
That's excellent.
I am transfixed. I'm like in Philadelphia at the time doing an internship for a public broadcasting channel, WYBE in Philadelphia. Yeah, it was
Sure.
PBS
Sure.
channel. It was just starting up, and I was interning there, and it was it was like a Saturday afternoon, so I'm at home and I'm watching the fights, and I just remember being like, who is this guy? And I knew who he was. Like, I'd read about it and I'd seen a few of his fights prior to this.
Oh, Nigel. Yeah.
Thinking maybe Barkley would, Barkley was a warrior and Barkley
Sure.
could hit.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, Barkley might get this guy because this dude was wild, But he wins this crazy shootout. But I was even more fascinated with this interview. But the interview only happened because Alex Wallow was willing to grill him on that, So I love that. Like Alex Wallow as a color commentator, Gil Clancy as the partner with Jim Ryan. Jim Ryan is straightforward sports broadcaster. I loved him.
They were the best team. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Wallow was the best color commentator.
Yeah.
I liked Marv doing NBC fights.
Yes.
But the best team was Ryan and Clancy.
Because they were complimentary. Because Ryan was like your everyman, and he was just going to deliver the fight. He was going to introduce you to the players. And then he could turn it over to the dyed-in-the-wool, old, gruff, grizzled boxing guy, which is what. And Gil Clancy was right out of Central Casting.
100%.
He had the voice and he talked like that.
Oh,
and he would give you all that insight about like a fighter's weight, or he would hear stuff about
strategy.
And I heard he overtrained for this one. He looks overtrained to me. I heard that they sparred 200 rounds. That's too many rounds, And I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know that. I heard they were still sparring the week of the fight. You don't do that, Oh wow, you hear all this stuff. And I remember like watching the replay of the CBS. Were they CBS? I think they were.
Yes, CBS.
CBS broadcast of actually both the Ray Leonard's fights with Tommy Hearns, and in both fights I remember Gil Clancy said Tommy came in too light. It's like he said Tommy Hearns is too tall. He shouldn't be weighing in at 145 pounds.
Wow.
And then for the rematch, like 9 years later, which took place at super middleweight, which is a perfect weight for Tommy Hearns with his frame, it was like a catch weight. It was a contracted weight where he wasn't supposed to come in heavier than I don't remember exactly, but he couldn't come in over 162. And it wasn't something that I normally would think about, but Gil Clancy brought that up. He's like, he said, listen, if Tommy was my fighter, I would come in at 167 or 168. If he had to pay a fine, pay the fine. You want a healthy fighter. I'm like, wow.
Man, that draw.
Great. Yeah.
All of us watching are like, yeah, you can call it a draw. We all know Tommy won that fight.
Oh yeah, and I love Sugar Ray, and I had to
sure.
Yeah, and I remember scoring it, and I'm like, yeah, Tommy won like at least 7 rounds to 5, if not 8 rounds to 5, plus the knockdowns.
Yep.
But at the same time, I kept my pride in my guy because I was like, you know what? If Sugar Ray had 15 rounds to work with, he probably stops Tommy.
Maybe. And again,
Tommy going in the 12th round. He had him going.
That's fair. You're right about that. I really got to watch this Nigel Ben Barkley fight, man. I'm excited to watch it.
I don't know if the post-fight interview is on YouTube, but look for it. It's crazy.
Well, you know likely that Wallow was the matchmaker for ABC too.
Yeah, he was quality
control. That's another reason
in those days. Yeah, for NBC, Ferdy Pacheco wasn't just the color commentator with Mars. He was the quality control guy because they figured, hey, you're a boxing guy.
Yep.
You go back in the day, go back to the 50s, the networks would have a quality control guy who was like a trainer or a former trainer or like a former boxing manager, somebody who understood matchmaking and knew what a good fight was. And that's the story with who's the great old trainer. He trained everybody, man. He trained all those heavyweights in Joe Lewis's Bum of the Month Club. Everybody from Benny Leonard all the way to Roberto Duran.
Oh, it's God damn it. Yeah, I could think
Freddie
of
Brown's partner.
Yeah. Oh, God damn it.
Robert De Niro played him in the Roberto Duran.
Right, movie. in the Duran movie, absolutely.
I don't know why I'm spacing out on the name.
But I am too. It's shame on both of us.
For one of these networks, he was the quality control guy. And this was at a time when organized crime was still involved with these fighters. and they would get pissed off. They're like, we want to make this fight for TV, and this guy is cock blocking us. Fuck that. And they hired somebody to put a pipe in his head.
Donnie,
Ray
Ray
Arcel. Thank you, Donald.
Thanks,
wow.
Don.
Yeah, Ray Arcel.
Yep.
Yeah. Ray
Shame
Arcel
on us.
got hit in the back of the. He got hit in the
Oh
head.
yeah.
And he was fucked up for a long time, and he was
And
out of thing until I think
the early
maybe
70s.
Roberto Duran or maybe Larry Holmes got him back in it. Maybe it was Roberto Duran.
It was Peppermint Loesch, or however you said his name. He was also managed by Duran's manager, and they asked Ray to come in and help him out and stuff. And then he discovered, from an American standpoint, discovered Duran, and came back to boxing and stuff. No, I loved Ray Arcel, brilliant man. Always, and it was one of those.
Great when you read about interviews with him in the magazines or in books, or when he's on camera. He
was on TV. Sure.
Yeah, really
brilliant
really
man.
Guy. Yeah,
yep.
Well spoken too. Really well spoken. Really.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of great trainers are. There was a trainer who was based out of here. That great Argentine trainer, Amilcar Brusa. He's the guy who built Carlos Monzon up from nothing, from nobody. But he trained 20 world champions, But he didn't speak any English. But he would hold court. And I don't speak Spanish, but like he would show me he would keep a book, not like a record book, but like a journal on the training habits of all of his fighters, how many rounds.
Wow.
He was really against overtraining, so he would count the number of rounds, and he knew what they were eating, or when he would show me the book, and he's speaking Spanish, but there was always somebody around who was bilingual that could tell me. But just brilliant, just geniuses.
When Lennox Lewis fought Rockman in the rematch, I spent 5 days in Vegas, and me and Bert Sugar hung out with Emmanuel Stewart.
Oh yeah, he could hold court like no other.
Oh my God, it was such an education, and really just be a fly on the wall and let the man talk, man. And it was a pleasure, absolutely. And it's still, again, both guys, man. I miss those guys; they were good guys.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Jesus, I'm interested in the novelty of Nagano. And it'll be fun to see him fight Joshua. Coming up, and we'll see what kind of skill he has. I mean,
he's got fundamentals. He's got something. I mean, I know Fury was not up for that. He wasn't expecting that and didn't know what to expect. So really, I mean, if Fury's a professional, he should have been at his best, but he wasn't. I don't think he was.
No, I hear you.
But I don't want to take away from Nagano's performance, because the guy has ability. He really does. He doesn't just have power. He's got pretty good speed, pretty good balance, for a guy making his pro debut. So, and obviously he's going to be very confident coming into this fight because he ran Fury so close. And I'm sure in his mind, he thinks he won that fight. And I wouldn't argue with him that much.
it was close. I mean, you hate
it was close. I think I had it like a round, or two for Fury, but
and I thought Fury won. I thought Fury won too.
Yeah,
but it was
Fury looked like shit. But something about Nagano threw Fury off. He was very uncomfortable in there.
Absolutely, man.
Let's see if Nagano can make Joshua uncomfortable. I think Joshua's going to give him respect. I think so, but I think Joshua's going to be a lot more ready and a lot sharper. And he's got the advantage that Fury didn't have. He's got like 10 rounds to study. You know what I mean on this guy? As a boxer. So I think that's important.
No, and I'm curious to see, because as we said, it took Joshua a long time to get over the Usyk losses.
Yeah.
Even the first Ruiz loss, where you could see his gun-shy mentality.
Yeah, he did.
But obviously he obviously looked confident. I was expecting a much more competitive fight with
I thought he looked good in that loss, the rematch loss to Usyk. I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he beats most other heavyweights, not named Alexander Usyk and maybe Tyson Fury. I was figuring with the effort and the skill and technique that he showed against Usyk in that rematch, he beats most heavyweights.
I respect that.
He's and the form that he showed against Otto Wallin was really good. Very disciplined, but still aggressive.
Absolutely. I'm going to zoom in because I see a comic book behind you.
Oh, where's the comic? Oh no, that's just That's just
The other side. Oh, is that a frame of a cover?
yeah, it's a gift. My gift from my wife. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I'm a big Jack Kirby fan, and I love Silver Age covers, Silver Age and Bronze Age covers. Bronze Age covers I remember seeing, in grocery stores and so forth.
Sure. And who's the fighter?
They're very special.
Who's the fighter above you on the other side?
Right over here?
Yeah.
That's me.
Oh my God, Doug! I didn't know you fought.
No, I did it. I did an exhibition. It was like for charity. This was in 2010.
That's
and I
great, man.
A fighter who's no longer with us, a junior lightweight contender named Eloy Perez.
Okay.
I boxed him in the Monterey area of California, and it was nerve-wracking experience because I don't know why they made me they didn't make me the main event. It was Eloy Perez was the main event, and I was in there with him. But on the undercard, on our undercard, was Riddick Bowe, Hall of Famer Riddick Bowe, and Tommy Morrison.
Wow. Wow.
So I got to hang out with these guys. I'm getting my hands wrapped, and we're all in the same area with all the other, fighters or whatever. And it was nuts because they had the promoters of this, the organizers, they had these local cops, these Salinas. And Salinas is a rough area. It's a farming community, but there's serious gang activity there. The cops got to be just as crazy as the gang members, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And these dudes were jacked. Like they had trained for months. They were sparring. They had trainers. They were working out. They were muscular. They were probably doing freaking steroids. And these guys took it to Riddick Bowe and Tommy Morrison, which you don't do. And they got their noses rearranged, and there was a lot of blood, and that freaked me out.
Wow.
These guys like being downstairs, and upstairs was a big ballroom, and everybody, they bought tables. It was like, they dressed up, and they were,
sure,
it was catered with like this, gourmet food and all that. And I hear this roar from the crowd, and these guys come down, and like literally the noses are like bent like that, and there's blood everywhere. And I'm like,
wow,
my heart started racing. Like, hey, I'm not prepared to do that. Like, I don't know what you guys expect. And the guys wrapping my hands, they're like, Doug, don't worry. It's usually not like this. I'm sorry. Like, don't worry about it. Eloy overheard my nerves, and he liked to joke. He was a practical joker. And so he was like, Doug, listen, it's a three-round exhibition, man. Listen, I'm just going to put it on you for the first round. If you can show me you got balls for the first minute of the first round, we'll just go through the motions. And I'm just like, and he laughed, and he got up and left. And I'm like, is he serious? And because I'm out, dude. I'm not getting knocked out in front of people. And they're like, Doug, sit down. I'm like, I don't care. I don't have no reputation to protect. You know what I mean? I'll walk out of here, man. And it's 2010, so social media isn't as strong as it is now. Wouldn't like people like getting footage of it on their phones or whatever. I'm like, hey, I'm getting out of here, dude. And they had to talk me down, dude. They had to talk me off the cliff. Like, dude, come on off that ledge, Dougie. It's gonna be all right.
You were following in the footsteps of George Plimpton, getting.
Yeah, no, it's. And here's the thing. I didn't train. I used to train like in the 90s, and I even sparred, because not that I wanted to spar, like I'm a tough guy. No. The trainer that I wound up with was a former like welterweight fringe contender named Kevin Morgan. Okay. And his dad, a guy named L.C. Morgan, was like an old school dude out of Youngstown, Ohio. He had like well over 100 fights, over 100 knockouts.
Wow.
Like he was like, and he was a crazy Rolling Stone. You can look him up on Boxing or whatever. L.C. Morgan. He wound up like he got into legal trouble up here and fled to Mexico, learned Spanish, and lived and fought in Mexico for like 10 years. Actually fought the great Jose Napoles and has a victory over Jose Napoles.
Wow.
Yeah. The Duke of Punch. And he had a weird inside. He was he had power in both hands, and he was an inside fighter, which is how his son Kevin was. And Kevin had a nice run, like, late 70s, early 80s. Got knocked out in one round by Marlon Starling. But hey, Marlon Starling's like, he should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Oh, another took great time.
And Kevin always told me anybody can be knocked out in the first round because you're cold. You know, your body's cold. If you're not properly warmed up, you get caught in the first round. You can get knocked out. So
Sure.
anyways, Kevin believed in sparring. You know, he wouldn't even call it sparring. He would just call it boxing. You're going to box. All my guys got to box. And I'm like, well, every day? He's like, yes, every day. So I had to do it. Now, it was against his guys. I wasn't all, but sometimes I'd be in there with amateur boxers and even pro boxers. Not a smart thing. I got some bruises on my brain. I got bruised ribs. I even had an x-ray done. I had contusions on my lungs. Remember my doctor saying,
oh my God.
This is bad. Stop. You know. And
yeah, man. Jesus.
I'm young, in 90s. You know, I'm in my 20s, and I'm like,
I get it, man.
It was my pride, though. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to look at the and say no. So I had that experience, and I trained a little bit going into this exhibition, but it was a real eye opener on how you can be in shape and you can think you know what, you know, you can think you know you have a plan, or you can think you're going to be okay, because this was an exhibition. And despite what Eloy was saying, I'm like, he wouldn't really beat my ass, would he? But despite that, on that walk, you know, from the dressing room to the ring, I was out of it. Like, I couldn't feel my body, you know, I wasn't, you know, it was the bright lights. Suddenly there's lights and there's an audience, and that's very different from sparring. And I had some sparring sessions where guys were trying to knock me the fuck out.
Sure.
I wasn't worried about it because I knew these guys.
Yeah.
And everybody around me in the gym, we're all brothers. We all know.
Sure.
So it's like brothers fighting in the living room. It can be brutal. You know, you can pick a Tonka truck up and bash somebody in the head, and there can be blood and everything, but you're not intimidated. You're not nervous about it, but it's different. So it was actually a really good experience for me to have. Like, sometimes fighters can be in the best shape and everything, and then they walk up them stairs and they don't got it. And that happens at the highest level. We see 100%. It. And there's no explanation for it. There's really, you know, it just happens. They didn't show up that day.
That's what I wonder if that was what was going on with Otto Wallin. And I'm really glad Joey Gamache stopped it before it did get serious, because he didn't have it. He did not have it. And I was really looking forward to that matchup.
No, and I wonder if that's and again, not to take away from the victory of Terrence Crawford or Naoya Inoue, but I wonder if that was the case with Errol Spence and Stephen Fulton. You know, Fulton had been in big fights here in the States, but not on that level.
Right.
In a country that he's never been to before.
Absolutely.
In a city he's never fought in before, against a fighter of that stature in a fight of that magnitude. It's different. It just is.
I'm with you, man.
I mean, he could have felt great. Like, I got this. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then on the walk to that ring, like, I don't feel like myself. You know, like that happens.
Sure.
It was like the exhibition. We did 3 rounds. It was like a dream. You know, and I'm hearing people yell at me, Doug, jab. You know, I don't know what I was doing. You know,
out of body experience.
I did. You. I mean, there were people who were there who said, yeah, you look good. You got a great jab and all that. But I tell you what, Eloy hit me in the ear. I don't think he was aiming for the ear, but it was like a hook. It hit me in the ear, the right ear, boom. And like, my ear was messed up. Like, it did something to what is it, that membrane in there? I don't know. I know. Yeah, exactly. Something stupid. It was, I couldn't hear it. It set, you know, things sounded funny afterwards. And then on the plane ride, I think I flew in through San Jose. Yeah, San Jose. So from San Jose to LA, I fly back. My daughter was with me. And my ear was itching. It was really bothering me in the descent into LAX, right? So I did something stupid. I held my nose and I blew like that. And the pain, it was excruciating. I did something. I made it worse.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know what I did. I didn't go to the doctor. I'm an idiot. But I did that. And so my hearing was messed up for like weeks.
Jesus. Wow. Yeah, well.
Yeah.
No,
even exhibitions. It ain't, you know, taking any kind of punches. And we had headgear and big gloves. You know what I'm saying?
I was wondering if you had headgear. Wow. All right.
We did. And I don't even remember, but it might have been 2-minute rounds for all, you know.
Well, so that's why I gave
your head going back. It's not good.
Politically, I was never a fan of his, but when Romney fought that exhibition with Holyfield. I gave him a lot of credit.
I do too. The president of the WBA, Gilberto Mendoza Jr., I think he did an exhibition with Holyfield.
Wow.
And Holyfield's strong. Yeah,
I've had yeah. Oh,
and
no.
He's kind of a mean, he can be a mean guy. He's gruff.
Well,
I've seen him shine people off. I've seen him.
Well,
he's
caught him on good nights.
I've never been at the brunt of it, but I've seen him be pretty mean, and I know, he's got that fighter's pride. He's just not going to let you, not going to just play with you, and make you, he ain't there to make you look good. I'm sure he lands some heavy stuff,
Well, I might have been lucky because
those guys.
I was Johnny Saraceno's wingman at a couple of fights. And Johnny,
really?
Oh yeah,
Saraceno did some exhibitions. They do amateur?
No. I don't mean it that way. I mean in a reporter's capacity.
Oh, hanging out with them.
I was hanging out with Johnny and stuff, and I got to know Johnny well.
He seemed like a good guy.
Great guy.
I never got to know him. I'd say hi or whatever. I'd see him.
Sure.
Always dressed well. Had the facial hair. Yeah, he looked like a character actor or something.
Aram used to call him, "Here he comes, Bram Stoker's Dracula."
Yeah, he did. He kind of had a vampire vibe. It was always dark. His suit was dark with like red, black suit with red, and he had the beard and kind of the shoulder length hair. Yeah,
he was from
USA Today, right? He was like their boxing guy?
Absolutely. He was he was from downstate Illinois. He was from Danville, Dick Van Dyke country.
Okay,
and so he always loved Chicago, and he's like, he knew all the Chicago media stars of the years before I was involved. And he's like, "Oh, do you know so-and-so? Do you know so?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually I do." Yeah. And no, he was great. He was a lot of fun.
Was there I know, I'm trying to think of there was a Michael Katz, not Michael Katz from New York, but another Michael Katz.
Oh, I don't know.
Midwestern. I don't know if he was, if he was Illinois or if he was Michigan. Maybe he was Detroit.
He might have been. There
was another Mike Katz that wrote about boxing. So
wow. Okay. Yeah, crazy.
Like the 90s. Yeah. I remember.
Okay.
They were all good guys, though. They were some characters too. Some of them have passed away. George Kimball out of Boston.
Never met George, but I'm aware of him. Yeah.
Man, what a character.
Yeah.
Obviously, Michael Katz, who's still with us, he was a character. He could be. He was moody. But he was a great guy. He could be the most charming individual in the world.
And Bernard Fernandez, I'm so sorry he's had that really bad back trouble and everything. Great guy.
Well, he just had surgery. Hopefully it's going to improve or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm looking to have him do some more work with Ring and Ring TV. Yeah,
that's awesome. Dougie, I wanted to ask you both about the magazine and the fact that every now and then you color commentate on fights as we wrap up.
I got a show coming up on UFC Fight Pass this Saturday, as a matter of fact.
Hey, excellent, man.
Yeah. So
that's cool. So is it an MMA or is it a boxing?
No. It's boxing on UFC Fight Pass. It's Tom Loeffler's 360 Promotions. And he's got some young fighters that he's kept real busy. His fighters, his prospects, they're fighting 4 and 5 times a year. 4 or 5, some of them fighting like 6 times a year.
That's great.
So he's doing it right, and they're advancing really quickly, and he's matching them tough. He's not matching them easy. So they're good fights. And like I said, it's kind of old school because it's grassroots, because it's crosstown rivals, right? So it's guys from Boyle Heights, East LA against guys from Inglewood or Compton or
I'm with you.
Santa Ana, and from Orange County or from Long Beach, and they bring their fans, and there's a rivalry, and they really, the crowd really gets into it, and they feed the fighters, and they make for they just enhance the atmosphere. Every fighter on Tom Loeffler's cards brings in like a couple hundred fans, so it's really special. Yeah,
that's great, man. No, there's something, again, I covered enough local cards in the 90s and early 2000s that it was a lot of fun. And
Tom's doing it right, because he's got an Irish kid named Callum Walsh. And last year he took Callum the week of St. Patrick's Day, took him to Boston and had him fight on Boston College campus, the Agus Arena. And great turnout there. And then in November, he took him to the theater at Madison Square Garden, and the Irish came out for him. But he had him in against a New York-based guy from the Bronx, a New York-based prospect, a fellow prospect, who brought in New York fans, and that's the best, you know. And he's this week, the week of St. Patrick's Day in March, he's taking the kid back to New York, back to the theater. So doing it right, building an audience, grassroots, and we need to have more of that. Yeah,
absolutely. And the magazine, what's coming up? And
we just we put to bed about a week and a half ago the January edition, which is the best of 2023, which is the year end awards, which is a tradition that Ring Magazine has had for 95 years. So it was this year. I mean, I'm sorry, the 2023 Fighter of the Year was Naoya Inoue. First time a Japanese fighter has received that award. But that's an award that goes all the way back to 1928. And the first recipient was Gene Tunney. Think about that.
when Dempsey was doing the ratings.
Yeah, that's right. Dempsey had a hand in the ratings, for a while.
Absolutely, man.
Fischer and Tex Rickard.
Who
start the magazine. Yeah. So we're going right into the February issue. Obviously, the cover is going to be Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk, and we're going to cook up something special for that cover and that issue. And the goal is to have it every month, and as up to date as possible, more up to date than the print magazine would have been, because with the magazine you got to have it finished, like,
of course,
a month or two before it comes out. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's more in real time, but I also want to have a few print issues. The goal is between 2 and 4 print editions, special issues.
Sure.
2024, but also to build up. We have a new app that really just went live today. So if you go to the App Store, the Apple App Store, or Google Play, and just put in search Ring Magazine, you can find it. You download it for free or whatever. And a lot of the stories, not all of them, but a lot of the stories, like the 2023 award stories in this January issue, they're for free. They're not behind a paywall.
That's cool.
But so the goal is to get as many people to download this app as possible, and to get as many subscribers as possible, but to really build momentum in 2024. And we'll have some we'll have some nice announcements this year regarding not just the app and certain perks of the app and perks of being a subscriber, but some merch, long overdue merch announcements, in terms of like T-shirts and other things.
That's great. A couple questions regarding that. First of all, I mean, again, as you said, 95 years. I mean, the Bible. There's a reason why it's called the Bible of Boxing. Everybody.
Yeah, in February, 102 years of being in existence, but 95 years of giving out annual awards.
Do you guys own all your, like, the old photos and do you have a good extensive? That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And also, I gotta ask you, because nothing depressed me more on Friday of the demise of Sports Illustrated.
Oh, yeah.
And man, Pat Putnam and so many of the great boxing writers that they had over the years. Unbelievable photography. I remember when I was in college, when Hagler Hearns and oh my God, those pictures of Tommy being carried out of the ring.
The thing about SI, and I would say, like, I love the Ring Magazine covers, especially from the golden age, the illustrated covers from the 30s and 40s and going into the 50s.
Oh yeah.
But when it came to capturing the event, not so much the event, but the drama of the fight itself, it was the Sports Illustrated covers, especially during the 80s. And it's because it was a weekly.
Yeah.
So it was like the first sort of long form feature that you could read, really in-depth, meaty feature that you would read. Obviously, the day after you read, the daily newspaper.
Certainly.
And if you lived in a city that didn't have a boxing columnist or a boxing beat writer, like I did, I was in Springfield, Missouri. There was the AP report. I would have to go to the library, right? And read George Kimball or Ron Borges, from the Boston.
Yeah.
The boss scribes to me were in New York City. So it was Wally Matthews and
Wally
Katz, and Phil Berger.
Yeah.
So, but the really good writing and the long form feature, like just like a week later or half a week later, was Sports Illustrated, and the memory of the fight was still fresh in everybody's head. So the cover was usually 90% of the time it was an action shot.
Yes,
it was, and it was beautiful. And
Uh-huh.
if you missed the fight, you were that photo captured the story of the fight, whether it was, like Larry Holmes fighting through a busted up face against Tim Witherspoon. And it's like, oh shit, Larry had to gut it out before you saw the fight, right? You see the Sports Illustrated cover, you read the article, and you go, oh man, okay.
Tommy Hearns and
I
Irene Barkley.
didn't see it live. I'm gonna tune in to the delayed podcast, and obviously, Hagler Hearns and all. It's like, it's the ferocity. It's like, whoa.
Oh yeah, Hearns Barkley when Tommy was all puffed up and everything.
Busted up. Yeah.
Yeah. I was working I was a DJ for an adult contemporary radio station during a good portion of the 80s. And we had a teletype. And a lot of times, and this is back when big fights were on Mondays and Thursdays, not on the weekend. And we would get round by round descriptions from the AP or UPI.
Yeah.
And the alert bell would hit. And I remember watching Hagler Hearns via teletype and just the round by round descriptions. And that's how I got it. And then, as you said, and then a couple days later when Sports Illustrated came out, you see those amazing photographs. Well, Don's right. Very physical photography. Absolutely. Man.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And that's, it's kind of a lost art,
I agree.
Because things are so fast now,
Yeah, but this is why.
I mean, you get. I mean, what you'll see more now with the promoters or the networks, their social media accounts, it'll be clips. It'll be little clips in there, which is pretty cool. That's good. But photography, it's a real art. And man, SI has got some iconic covers. My goodness.
Yeah, man. In every sport. No, you're right about that.
Every sport, exactly. Every sport.
But this is why, Dougie, I'm glad that Ring is still out there. I'm glad you're doing a great job managing Ring.
Still in it.
I love the mailbag. I always appreciate your
candor. I used to do. I did for 20 years. I did that twice a week, and then I stopped. But I'll be doing it this year.
Okay, good. I hope so.
It'd be a magazine. It might be the magazine feature as well. I might do it.
Okay. All right.
Special occasions.
Keep it up, Doug. I'm really glad. Again, I'm really glad you're out there doing it, and
thank you.
You reading what you guys do at Ring, and also I'll even say Ringside Seat as well when they're publishing.
Oh yeah, they do an amazing job.
That's
great. That's a great. It's one of my favorite follows on Twitter or at Boxing X, whatever you want to call it.
I'm with Boxing X. Absolutely,
that's a great account. Oh my god.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're on point with all the fight anniversaries. I love that. Yeah.
I know. God, I was thinking about back in 2000, Roy Jones and David Telesco. I was at Radio City for that fight.
Oh yeah, that was Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah,
Telesco went the distance.
He did go the distance, but it was kind of a one-sided fight.
That fight and the fight with Honey Boy Lou Del Valle let me know that what, Roy's peak was 168. He was really like a big middleweight, a real big, just ultra athletic, dynamic middleweight. At 175, still special. Actually, at 175, you saw more of his ring generalship because he had enough speed and power. Definitely had the speed, but he had enough power to keep these guys honest, but didn't quite have the power to spark out a tough light heavyweight. And part of that equation, he was a little more leery of what was coming back with these big ass light heavyweights. So he was a little more careful at 175. Fair. Still a generational talent, still very special.
Oh, 100%.
I'm glad that I was able to. I wasn't able to witness him ringside from press row in the 90s. So the first Roy Jones fight that I covered was in New Orleans against Eric Harding.
Okay, sure.
Whatever that was in 2000.
Hilarious.
And then I saw him fight at Staples Center against the late Julio Cesar Gonzalez, big Mexican light heavyweight.
I remember
probably the first Mexican national to win a major light heavyweight title, because Gonzalez a couple years later, he beat Darius Mikuszewski for the WBO strap. Traveled to
Wow.
Germany and got it done. Yeah, that guy that Roy Jones never fought.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah, so of course, Roy Jones took credit. He's like, well, the guy that I beat him. So, same thing, right? That's how it works. Yeah. But still, to see Roy live is still something special.
Oh, yeah.
Even though he wasn't at his absolute peak.
I'll admit, I wanted Tony to beat him when they fought at 168.
A lot of guys did. A lot of hardcore heads did. Yeah.
But I have to, it was funny. Our afternoon hosts on my sports radio station got Roy on the phone, and they made me apologize to him that I doubted him.
I'm sure Roy appreciated that apology.
He was great. He was.
Yeah.
Really, I had a very nice Forrest Gumpian kind of boxing career in terms of my writing and my broadcasting, and the greats that I got to talk to, like Archie Moore, like Foreman, who did I just blank on? Floyd Patterson. I got to talk to Floyd.
Oh wow, Floyd.
When Tracy was still fighting and stuff, and I'm like, Floyd, I go,
Patterson.
yeah, and I gave Tracy his respect, but I'm like, Floyd, I really want to know. Tell me everything, man. Tell me about the Olympics. Tell me about your run and everything. Yeah, he was a great guy, sweetheart of a guy.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Well, and Dougie, you've times 10 all year fine. That's right. Don Lenza points out that Roy fought Ron Amundsen. We talked about Roy earlier.
That was on network television. That was one of his first NBC.
The Storm and
Mormon. That was it. That was the nickname, Storm and Mormon.
There you go, man.
I think there's been other Storm and Mormons, but
I'm sure there have.
He's my Storm and Mormon.
I'm with you. That's awesome. And Curtis Strong, I remember when he fought De La Hoya early on, and he was a Chicago guy that had a bite of the apple and had to face the rest. Well, and of course Angel Manfredi and shame on me, not damn it. What's his face? He's Floyd, not Floyd. The guy who fought McGregor. Yeah, Mayweather. Mayweather.
Yeah, he fought Mayweather. Yeah, that was Mayweather's final fight of 1998, and he clinched Ring Magazine's Fighter of the Year award.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Floyd went from fighting Gennaro Hernandez, who I think he's worthy of the Hall of Fame. I think he just got in.
That's cool.
I think he did. I hope he did. He should. Anyways, cool. October of 98, Floyd beats Gennaro Hernandez for the title. And then in December, he takes on the number one contender in Angel Manfredi and blows him out in 2 rounds.
Yep.
And I think he fought 7 times that year, 7 times in all. And I was actually ringside he fought a Canadian dude, a good fighter, tall guy named Tony Pep. Fought him in Atlantic City, and I was there. I was actually ringside for that.
Speaking of Peps, I'm curious about this indie movie that they just made about Willie Pep.
What's his name? Ice John Scully out of Connecticut, because he posts so much about it.
Oh, I follow him on Twitter.
I can't wait to see it, because I think Scully was like a consultant for like the
boxing. That's cool.
Yeah.
Goddamn.
Whoever the actor is playing the great Willie Pep, he was trained by Ice John Scully, which is good.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. God, he looks just like Willie Pep. That's great casting, man.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
Yeah.
So,
an amazing career. I'm looking forward to watching that.
Dougie, I'm gonna make you check in with me maybe in a few months,
Anytime.
And we'll catch up more. And also, shame on me.
Let's talk about comic books a little bit next.
That's what I was gonna say. Next time, I know, because you're a big comic book fan, and I love that we're both boxing and comic book people. That's a rare. Cronenberg is like that. Mike Cronenberg is also like that.
Yeah.
So
what a terrific designer, terrific graphic.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
So no, thanks a lot for coming on, Doug. I really appreciate it. I always have fun talking to you, and it means a lot.
Hey, anytime, John.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for watching. Until next time, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.